Welcome to Crossroad Connection. We're speaking out for those left unheard. My name is David Schuringa. I'm the president of Crossroad Bible Institute and the host of your program, Crossroad Connection. I have in the studio with me today a very special guest, Dr. Stephen Mansma. Dr. Mansma is a senior research fellow at the Henry Institute for Politics and Christianity.
That's right, at Calvin College.
At Calvin College. So welcome to the program.
Well, it's good to be here, David.
You've been a professor of political science. You've written about 100 books, seems like.
Not quite. Some days it seems like it.
So you've dedicated your whole life to this question probably. What is justice?
Yes. And you can go way back to St. Augustine, and you hardly can improve on his definition, which was giving all persons their due. It's very simple, but there's a lot of content there because human beings, I firmly believe, have been created by God in His image. They're God's image bearers. Therefore, they have a certain worth and dignity, and certain rights are owed them. And included in this, that is a sense of justice, that it's because we have been created in God's image and by God. That's why justice is owed persons, that this is part of our right as created human beings.
Giving people their due, however, sounds to me like raw payback and retribution.
Well, in part, it does. I believe in punishment, that someone who has, whether it's taken another person's life or engaged in fraud, defrauded people out of hundreds of thousands of dollars. You read about that sort of thing with Ponzi scams and so forth, that they do. There is a debt that they owe society. I like to think of balances in the scale, that the evil they have done, the harm they have done to other of God's people and to society, that there is a certain debt that must be repaid. Now, that's different than vengeance and, lock them up and throw the key away kind of a mentality. They still are human beings, even the persons who have, because of mistakes and errors and sins they have committed, we conclude they need to be incarcerated for a period of time. Even as incarcerated persons, they have certain rights. They still are human beings. But yet, I think it is also true that it is right for society to, through the formal government and through due process, to punish individuals.
Didn't you just now make an argument for capital punishment, though?
Absolutely.
Eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, payback, life for a life.
No, absolutely not. I come back to my point that you can punish someone for murder, for taking another human being's life, through lifetime imprisonment. You do not have to engage in capital punishment. There is that alternative, and it's an alternative which allows the individual to repent of what he or she has done. If there has been error in the criminal justice system that found the person guilty, that there can be redress, at least partial redress for that wrong that was done. There's still, the state is saying, the government is saying, you must be punished. You did wrong. You harmed another individual to death even. In doing so, you harmed society. But we, and therefore you will be punished. But we do not have to take your life in order to balance the scales, as I put it earlier.
It sounds like you see you're taking away their life in a sense by incarcerating them for life. You're
taking away their freedom.
Right.
And boy, if anyone says that is not a severe punishment,
sure.
I don't think they've been in any of our penitentiaries of our country. I mean, they are not pleasant places, and so it indeed is punishment.
Nick Walterstorff's recent book, Justice and Love, and he's lectured here before and so forth. makes a case for the end of the reciprocity code in the New Testament era, and that punishment should be corrective, not retributive. Any thoughts on that?
Well, I haven't read Nick Walterstorff's most recent book, so maybe he'll change my mind when I.
You want to keep an element of retribution in.
I would. I hesitate to say that, though, because retribution, I think, in our society has taken on
A vengeance thing.
a vengeance and an extreme element. You know,
We want to see him get his. I mean, that's what all these bloodthirsty movies are about, right?
Right.
You know,
Right.
They get the bad guy and he gets his.
Yep. And I know some years ago, Chuck Colson, when he was living, talked about this a bit and argued that trying to reform the criminal and having the whole criminal justice system aimed at reforming the person, and that the person would not be released until some prison psychologist will say, okay, now he's been reformed, now he can go out into society, in a way is a more severe form of punishment, more dehumanizing than more the concept of retribution, which says, okay, you committed a wrong, you need to be punished for that, but once that debt is paid, you are a free person. You can go your way. We even will help you to re-enter society, to be a productive citizen. Whereas if you're reforming a person based upon some modern social science and so forth, that person could be incarcerated for a much longer period of time because he's not cooperating in group sessions and so forth. So I think you have to be careful about the idea of reforming individuals. Certainly you should. That should be a goal of our criminal justice system, and provide especially the re-entry tools that persons need, where I think our society has especially been, historically has been lacking. But to say that is the sole goal or purpose, and that retribution or balancing the scales, as I've said, do not enter in, I at this point anyway, I shy away from that yet.
Very, very, very interesting, fascinating. Now, have your views on capital punishment evolved at all? Because I think that you were a co-author of a report back in 1981 for the Christian Reformed Church, which was back in discussion recently, where it concluded that in extreme circumstances, the state had the right and could execute. Did I interpret the report correctly? Do you still have that position?
Well, I was afraid you're going to ask about that.
I'm not trying to put you on the spot.
No, because that goes back quite a while. But essentially, my views have
DNA.
not. Yeah, but my views have not changed.
So the state does have the right to execute yet?
Well, if the option of imprisonment is not available, just theoretically, if there's a tribal nomadic society, whether inhabiting the jungle someplace or desert area.
And there are no prisons?
Yeah, they're a nomadic society. They're constantly on the move. Or if in the middle of a civil war and revolution where, again, it's impractical or impossible to incarcerate persons, then maybe under these very unusual circumstances.
Did the report at that time have these extremely unusual circumstances in view?
Well, that was at least my intent, my understanding of the committee's
intent. It's not been interpreted like that, has it?
What happened, there was an initial report, I think it came out in 1978, and it went to the Christian Reform, the governing body, the Synod. They did not adopt it. They sent it back to the churches for discussion and comment for a couple years. And then it came back to our committee. I think by then it was around 1980, 1981. And it was revised. And I think some of the language was changed. And here I have a confession to make. By early 1980s, by then I'd been elected to the state senate. I was preparing to run for Congress. I was very busy, wasn't as involved in the work of the committee as with that first report. And I think in the second report, some unfortunate language was adopted.
They took advantage of the exception clause.
Yeah, it sort of weakened it or made it so it could be interpreted more broadly than what we had originally intended. And subsequent to that, I think it's been interpreted even more broadly.
Yes, exactly.
You know, I lived, as I mentioned earlier, I lived in California for 17 years, which does have capital punishment. Happily, Michigan does not, and that's
Right.
one reason I'm proud to be from Michigan, by the way. But in California, for capital punishment to invoke, there needs to be special circumstances, quote unquote. That's a legal term, and but that's been interpreted rather broadly. So a large number of first-degree murder are now labeled as special circumstances and therefore eligible for the death penalty. And the intent, even of that second report of our committee, was never to broaden it out to that extent. It was, we were very clear that we think it's unwise for states, for countries, for governments to impose capital punishment.
It's interesting you mentioned California because I understand that the number one cause of death on death row in California is old age. So they placate the masses by having the death penalty, but they never use it.
Yeah, they do occasionally. It's not like Texas, happily.
Yeah, for sure.
But a moment ago I mentioned Michigan, and a lot of people don't realize that Michigan has never executed anyone. When
Something happened, but it was through a federal prison or something like that, wasn't it?
Right.
Yeah.
It was a federal case.
Yeah.
But the state of Michigan, when it entered the Union in 1837, their Constitution explicitly provided no death penalty.
Really?
And Michigan
I did not know that.
Yeah, Michigan was one of the first political units in the Western world to not to have the death penalty. I mean, in 1837, almost all the European countries had death penalty. Almost all the states in the United States.
So it
did.
was even ahead of Europe. Michigan.
Exactly.
Wow.
Exactly. And
That's
I did a
amazing.
little research on that recently. And apparently, while Michigan was a federal territory, so federal law applied, before it was a state, someone had been executed and later was found to be innocent. So that when Michigan became a state, the leader said, we do not want the death penalty
That
here.
experience was looming over that.
Yes, indeed.
Wow. Our time has just flown, but I'm going to conclude with this. You're an expert in this field and so forth. I see a divided population, even a divided church on this issue. Those who are for the death penalty and those who are against the death penalty. And I've been thinking about this. Do you think this would be a valid, helpful way to bring the groups together? And that is to say, whether you believe in the death penalty or not doesn't really matter. But the fact is that innocent people are getting executed, and there's a disparity with people who have education and economics and those who don't. Therefore, we should have a moratorium on the death penalty until it can be applied justly.
Well, I hate to use the term as a political tactic, I think that might make sense, because it's easier for persons to accept a moratorium than they think it's going to be permanent.
Right.
But I do see a flaw in it, in that, as you say, well, we'll have a moratorium until the criminal justice system can be improved or strengthened, or we can make sure that innocent persons are not executed. Well, I think any human institution, whether it's a criminal justice system or colleges and universities or the church for that matter, are on this earth before Christ's return are never going to be perfect. I don't care what you do. They're human institutions. They're
Right.
flawed.
So therefore, from your perspective, you could favor that statement because you would favor the moratorium because you know that it'll never be applied justly.
Well, that's true. I mean, if you have a moratorium until you have a perfect criminal justice
It's gone.
system, you'll never have the death penalty, because on this earth you never will have
think
a
it's the
perfect
perfect
criminal
solution.
justice. Well, maybe, but there's a bit. You must admit there's a bit of sleight of hand there. 'Cause
Well, I'll have to think about that. Dr. Monsma, this has been a great pleasure. Thank you so much for being on the show with us, and we just are delighted that you could be here and share your wealth of knowledge and wisdom.
Well, it's good to be with you, and God bless you and all the work that you're doing.
Thank you so much. And thank you for being with us today on Crossroad Connection for this special time with Dr. Stephen Monsma. And we hope to see you again right here next week.